Okay, we'll give a couple, we're gonna get started because it is 7:05. So, let's see. All right, well, hello and welcome everyone. I'm Rebecca Glucklick, Associate Director of Alumni Relations. Thank you so much for joining us today and for giving me a reason to remind myself how to do my hair and makeup. That was a nice little treat. So before we get started with our program, we just have a few housekeeping things to cover. So as you may have noticed, you are all on mute and you won't have the ability to turn your mic on, but we are going through and giving you access to use your camera. So I encourage you to show us all your lovely faces if you're able, so our guests feel like they are talking to people. After all your virtual classes, I'm sure you are all Zoom pros, but I want to mention that you should set your Zoom to speaker view so you'll be able to see which of our guests is talking. We've got a number of great questions that we received in advance, but if you have additional questions that you would like our panelists to answer, please send them through the chat function. All right, so let's do this. First and foremost, on behalf of the Alumni Engagement Team, I want to congratulate those of you who just completed your final semester at Emerson. And welcome to the alumni community. We will find a way to celebrate the entire class of 2020 when we're able to do so safely. We've put this panel together for you to help you better prepare for entering the post-college workforce in a time when the economy isn't particularly thriving and when companies have had to drastically shift their hiring and work practices. We hope that hearing from some alumni who experienced this during the last recession will give you the confidence you need to get out there and take the world by storm as only Emersonians can. So quickly, I'd like to go through and introduce our guests. First, we have Alan Gwizdowski, who is a VMA alum from the class of 2009. Alan is a cinematographer and a woodworker based in LA. Hey, Alan.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
And then we have Aviv Russ, class of 2009, who studied production and is living in LA, where he's been working as an independent producer for the last 10 years. Hey, Aviv.
Hi, everybody.
Evan Kaufman graduated in 2009 with a BFA in writing for film and television. He is currently the creative producer for content studio Malka Media in New Jersey, but is joining us today from Cape Cod. Hey, Evan.
Hi, everybody. It's confusing.
I kind of feel like Andy Cohen at a reunion show. It's my
Who's
life
the bartender?
I wish. Gray Malin, class of 2008, received his BS in Marketing and Communication. Joining us from West Hollywood, Gray is a fine art photographer and founder of the Gray Malin brand. Hey, Gray.
Hi, everybody.
Heather Marie Vitale graduated in 2008 with a BS in Political Communication. She is now living in DC and is a cyber intelligence analyst with Peraton. Hi, Heather Marie.
Hi, everybody.
Kristen Burke, class of 2009, double majored in theater studies and fiction writing. She is now the executive director of national sales for the LA Times, and while she's usually in New York, she's escaped to Los Angeles. Hi, Kristen.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
And of course, we have our moderator, Nejam Rahim, who's an associate professor of economics at Emerson, and I'm sure many of you recognize him from your classes. Thank you so much for doing this, Nejam, and now I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Do you want to introduce Kayla and yourself as well, just briefly, in case folks don't know who you are?
If you missed it at the beginning, I am Rebecca Glucklick. I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Relations. And Kayla?
Hello, everyone. My name is Kayla Carcone. I'm from the class of 2019, believe it or not, and I also work in alumni relations. So we're really thrilled to have you on the other side now as alumni, and we're glad that you're here tonight.
Cool. So, hey guys, thanks for coming. I'm going to have to leave right before 8 o'clock, so you're going to just see me disappear. Don't take it personally. It's not a technical problem. I just have to go. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview, though perhaps you're following this obsessively, of what's been going on nationwide. I'm not going to break it down too much by sectors, but there's just a huge, we'd call it a demand shock in economics. Like there's just people aren't buying stuff, people aren't doing stuff, and so they've got this enormous amount of economic slowdown in terms of all kinds of activities across all kinds of sectors and industries. And there's what? Now we just got unemployment numbers again today, over 20 million people filing for unemployment. So that's a huge and kind of surprising thing. And there's a mix of like firms laying people off, firms fighting really hard to keep the people that they have. I feel like Emerson's kind of in that boat. And then some firms are rocketing. Amazon's cranking, right? A bunch of places they're doing really well. There's certain sectors of the economy are doing super well. So it's really patchy and there's an enormous amount of uncertainty. I was just reading a piece this morning in the New York Times about if this is kind of where we stop, we'll probably be okay. But if we keep going in terms of this rate of unemployment, then other industries are going to start suffering as well. So there's a lot of lack of clarity about exactly how this is going to play out. But perhaps that. Or maybe you've just been able to kind of keep that off your screens for a while because it's just so panic inducing. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to ask these excellent folks some questions and then we're going to turn it over to you guys. One of the things I want all of the, well, I guess you're all alumni now, but the older alumni, if I could say that, to talk about is kind of briefly describe their journeys from graduation to where they are now. And if we could, I'd like to start with Heather Marie. Is that okay? I'll just call you by name.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we'll go around because I can't point or do anything alphabetically.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Again, my name's Heather Marie, graduated 2008. I was lucky in that I worked my network and I was able to get a job working at the Massachusetts State House right after graduation. And I had that job for 2 months and then I got laid off because the economy really started to tank. So after that, I temped. I worked for a few years doing admin work professionally, but still studying and still doing political communication and things like that on the side. I went back to school in 2013, got a master's in political science, and now I've been working as an analyst for the government for the past 5 years.
Super cool. Thank you. Gray.
Yeah, hi class 2020. Yeah, I was fortunate I had an internship in Boston and it led to a job for me in Los Angeles. And I worked at a film studio and believe it or not, I was around all these talented individuals and I wasn't feeling that passion that they all had for film. So I quit my job. And I started to focus on photography, and all the art galleries during the recession sadly were closing. And so I started to take classes and sell my work in a flea market in West Hollywood. And I think by just taking that leap of faith into during the recession, not going through an art gallery and going into a flea market really allowed me to think about starting my own company. So in a weird way, the recession was like a huge blessing in disguise for me. And then after that, I was able to work my way online. And that's where I have my company today, which is just selling fine art photography that I shoot around the world and creating products. So yeah, that's me.
That's awesome. Kristen.
Hi. Yeah, I graduated in the class of 2009. And at that time, we were also going through a bit of a recession. So I remember I moved to New York soon after graduating, and I was working like 20 jobs. I was freelance writing for a number of different websites. And then I also had 3 full-time internships for about 9 months. One of those companies was actually the company that ended up hiring me for my first full-time job, called Magnet Media. which was kind of a tiny little creative shop that was doing branded content before branded content was really the zeitgeisty term that it is today. People didn't even really know that it was branded content. They just knew that they wanted to make cool content and they needed someone to fund it, hence bringing it kind of retroactively to brands. So I got started doing content campaigns pretty early on, but one thing that I think is important to note about that journey is when I started at Magnet as an intern, I was writing for them because I graduated with theater and fiction writing as my double major, and I thought I wanted to segue that into playwriting. And when I asked them for a full-time job as a writer, they said, it's 2009, we don't hire writers right now. You can still do that for free, or you can work for us full-time as a business development assistant and we'll pay you. And I was like, that sounds great, sign me up for that. And then took the job and of course had to leave that day and Google what does business development assistant mean, because I had absolutely no idea. But that's ultimately how I got started doing content campaigns and what I'm doing today at the LA Times.
Outstanding. So let's go Aviv, Evan, Allen. But I'll go back to that.
Hi, I'm Aviv. I am currently, again, a freelance producer. When I graduated around the same time, 2010, and 09, I had an internship at a production company named Partisan. They're a commercial and music video house, and I parlayed that internship into a series of PA opportunities, just kind of going around to all the producers that work there and told them, like, I'll work for whatever the going rate is and a little less, maybe whatever you can pay me, I'll take it. And as I kind of climbed the ladder, I made a promise that I would always try and be a little further along next year, and learned what the person above me was doing. And I took whatever they told me was their least favorite part of the job, and I said, I'll do that for you. And then I just kept doing that until I got an opportunity to produce on my own and started my own career there and my own business, and became a head of production about 3 or 4 years ago at a production company called Pollution. And I've worked the last 2 or 3 years at a production company called Me Too. It's a Latin content company and publisher. But back in the situation that a lot of us are in right now, looking for work and trying to navigate this new economy.
Thank you. I think it was Evan and then Alan.
Hi guys, I'm Evan. I graduated 2009. The summer of 2009, I actually stayed in Boston and worked at a theater that I had been working at while I was in school called Improv Asylum, where I was an usher. Then I was a manager. I taught classes there and performed as well. I then moved to LA to do the program, the LA program. Got some internships, and then got a job on the Sony lot delivering checks to Grips, which was really enlightening. And I suggest you all do that, because that'll remove some of the glamour. But also you get to handle money, which is cool. I parlayed that into a series of very small kind of PA jobs, much like Aviv. And then I actually moved back to Boston and worked full time at the Improv Asylum, performing and teaching and making a very small amount of money and living in a very small apartment. I moved to New York and kind of continued to pursue some acting stuff. And eventually I fell into production just by the nature of having to produce and make my own things, which I'm sure a lot of you are kind of in that boat as well. And then I have just kind of stumbled my way through various production jobs, creating content here and there for different places, until finding myself at this company called Malcolm Media just this past year. So that's kind of the journey. It doesn't make a ton of sense even now as I say it.
Thank you. Alan.
Hi guys. So I'm a freelance cinematographer and woodworker. I never really put woodworking in my job title until this stay-at-home order really went into effect. So My career is in cinematography, but I recently just started my side business as a woodworker to try to get that going a bit. But to start my career, I did the Emerson LA program, and I was at a production company called Radical Media. That was my first time really being in a production office, seeing how a production company ran from top to bottom to create content and do commercials and music videos. At the time, there really wasn't any indicator for me that there was an economic turndown, because I had never seen a production office like this before. To me, this was all big production. This was Hollywood. This is how it worked. I had never been in a place like that before. It was always bigger than any Emerson film set that I had been on. So it was just cool to see in the first place, but I didn't have that already ingrained idea of what it was like to be in a production office at that point. So to me, this was something that I'm just starting at the bottom, and whatever I can do to get the next step, I'll take that. Once I graduated, using those internship connections and also the Emerson Mafia, which is a real thing, I just started to make as many connections as I possibly could and try to get on set in any position that would really hire me. I did PA gigs, tried to work my way into the camera department, working as a camera PA, if I could get on, just kind of get on as a PA, but then try to work with different departments, let them know I'm here for a helping hand. I'm not trying to be a career PA. If I can help the electricians, the grips, the camera department, let me know if there's something I can do for you. And then that was the way I kind of worked my way in with some larger crews. At the same time, I was working with all my friends from Emerson, the guys that I was making the student projects with, doing all the extracurricular stuff. We were doing whatever side projects we could do just to, be creative, do our passion projects, make some music videos. So anytime I could work my way into doing a still photo gig, shoot headshots for an actor friend, music videos for musician friends, and small commercials and stuff like that, I would jump on those opportunities. I did a bunch of little comedy videos that were passion projects, just get a camera, some lights, some friends, do some comedy videos, and some of them went viral. So then that was kind of our chance to work with some companies who were reaching out. Like Kristen was saying, before the branded content was really a thing, nobody really knew how to do it. So they were just trying to figure out who's getting followers, who's creating this kind of content. And after having a few just small side project videos that went viral, these companies started to reach out, and we were just trying to take whatever opportunities we could. So the guys I was working with on those projects that eventually turned into doing some work like original content for platforms like College Humor and Funny or Die, which, while those companies were trying to figure out how to work this whole branded content idea, doing these small videos turned into basically digital commercials, which led to bigger commercials and eventually TV projects. So for a while I was working, as a PA, then a camera assistant, trying to get whatever jobs I could to step up to work towards my eventual goal of being a cinematographer, which was not just the flip of a switch. It was working as an AC for a while. Then eventually I was able to make that leap to be a full-time cinematographer. And now I've been doing that for about 6 years until we were forced to stay at home, and my passion hobby of woodworking has become my side business for now.
Alan, do you know the old Bonnie Prince Billy song, "I'm a Cinematographer"?
No, I don't.
I don't know your taste in music at all, but it's evocative anyway of your situation as a cinematographer. And it's a lovely song. So that's fantastic. So this is amazing to hear y'all's journeys, and some of them have sharper turns in them than others. Some of them seem to be like a sort of a smoother transition across all these different things. I'm going to go slightly off script and ask this question. Tell us a little bit about, like, not just how the technical skills you learned at Emerson, but like the disposition or attitudes maybe that you picked up or that you developed or you had to learn at Emerson, how did that help you get through all of these different things to something where you were, not looking to change too often? Like, I guess I'll sort of give an explanation of that. Like, I was a theater major at Bennington College, so I did, we had to make our own productions, and I was always working on things. So I was always trying to figure out, like you guys are talking about, like, how do you do this? How do you do this? How do you build this? How do you wire this? So by the time I got into the PhD program at the University of New Mexico, I was just used to solving difficult problems and was thankfully intellectually arrogant enough to assume that I could. So, like, that's the kind of thing. Aviv, could we start with you?
Yeah. I, so I think my course to get to production was a little funny. I actually came into Emerson as a marketing major, realized that I do not like marketing, and I sat with the head of the film department and talked with him until he let me join the department and threatened to drop out of school, and really weaseled my way in. At that point, though, I was the last person admitted to that department that year, so I got the last pick of every class. So my mentality going into my education at Emerson was, I'm not here to get a grade. I'm here to just make all the connections I can, learn as much as I can in these different environments. And my weekends were the courses that I really enjoyed, where I'd work with my friends and other students on different projects and learn from them and seek to understand what, as a producer, which is what I wanted to be, what my obligations are. How do I know that I'm giving my directors and my cinematographers and my crew not just a safe and good environment to work in, but all the tools and resources that they've asked. And it's pretty rough at the beginning. I made a lot of mistakes. And it helped bring me to a place where I knew that it's about the people that I'm working with and about the experiences that I'm making with these individuals that help me shape my development into what I think ultimately is what's great about Emerson, is the experiences and the extracurriculars that you get to take advantage of.
Cool, thank you. Kristen.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the ability to craft a story and to craft a narrative with good writing is applicable to basically any industry, any job, any subset of society today. If you are a good writer, you are very valuable, that much more valuable than many other people at the organization, because as I'm sure you guys will see when you get into the workforce, there are a lot of not so great writers out there. And one of the things Emerson, especially within the WLP major, really helped me with was really figuring out how to find my voice as a writer. I was fiction writing emphasized, but you can apply that to just about any proposal, any creative pitch. I can't tell you how many times I've kind of harkened back to some of the fundamentals of good writing from college and applied those into our sales presentations. So I think that to me was one of the biggest things that I always took away from my college time. And then another one is just being malleable and being scrappy. I went from working for a tiny little company with 20 people to working for a bureaucratic news organization that's been around for over a century. And so the bureaucracy and the red tape is obviously much greater at a place like the LA Times than it is at a place like Magnet Media. But I have found that some of the coolest things that we've done at LA Times have been leveraging that scrappy way of thinking and that ability to be malleable and to think outside of the box, and just continuing to ask the question of why are we doing it the same way that we've always done it for over a century? Why don't we try doing it this way for the first time instead and see what happens? And that has paid itself back in dividends, I would say, in more ways than one. So yeah, I would say the two main things are the ability to write and the ability to kind of think creatively and be malleable.
That's awesome. Gray.
When I was at Emerson, by the way, that was a great answer. When I was at Emerson, I really loved the extracurricular programs, and I did a bunch of them from like MCOM to the television. But ultimately, I guess what I learned was that at Emerson, I was so focused on graduating there, working in the film industry, and I had studied marketing communication and minored in photography, and yet I became obsessed with film. And it was just because everyone around me was really passionate about it. I think the greatest thing about it all is just being around so many talented people. It gave me courage to sort of get back to what I love, and which was oddly photography. And I just think seeing everyone at Emerson be such a hardcore go-getter made me feel really confident in being, sort of, I guess, taking that energy into my career path. And, there's just so many things to be afraid of, especially during times like this, but you really, you can't be, you can't give up. You really have to keep fighting. And I think hearing everybody's story, you hear a lot of people have been, went from internships to jobs they didn't necessarily want to have and eventually got somewhere, which I think it's really important. Anyways.
Thank you. Heather Marie, I feel like you had one of the sharper turns in this whole trajectory thing.
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely the take the job that will pay you, and then kind of got stuck doing that for a little bit. But one thing that I took from Emerson, Kristen also had the answers that I was going to have, which was like writing, communicating very clearly, and thinking creatively. I think thinking creatively too, also about making the most of your circumstances. I worked for 4 or 5 years doing admin work, which I didn't go to this very expensive college to be answering phones and putting my boss on an airplane every day, but I made the most of it. I found other ways to still be creative, and I worked in my community. I lobbied Congress with a volunteer gig. I used to be a docent at the JFK Library when I lived in Boston. It's finding, figuring out what you want to do and finding a way to do that. So thinking creatively out of the box for yourself, not just for what you're doing every single day. I think even if you don't love what you're doing right now, that doesn't mean that's who you are. It doesn't tell you what your worth is. It's temporary, and you can always find some sort of pride and excitement in the things that you're working on.
That's awesome. Alan, this time, and then Evan.
So when I got into Emerson, I got into the school, but I didn't get into the film program, which at the time was a big bummer for me. I wanted to get into film. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't necessarily even know what a director of photography was at the time. I just knew that there was directors, there's producers, there's people on set, you make movies, I'll figure it out. So I wanted to be in the film program, but I didn't get accepted into that specific program at the school. I was placed into the TV video program, which once I was there and we were taking gen ed classes, that was mixed with the film students. I was still in class with a bunch of them. And then I realized after my freshman year, because I was planning on transferring into film sophomore year, I believe. But I realized that once I was there, I'll still be able to take those electives, take some film classes, cinematography, and pick and choose the things I really want to focus on. But while I'm there, I'll have to be in the TV video program. I'll finish those classes, and that's what my degree will be in. Once I'm out of Emerson, I have a visual media arts degree. I'm also a cinematographer, which you could just join the workforce. Technically, I could have done that. I could have skipped film school. But I think the big takeaway for Emerson for me was the community that I was involved with. Like Aviv, it was the weekend student film projects, being on set with all these different kids, making those relationships and finding what position it is you like to do on set, so you can kind of gear yourself towards trying to achieve that in the workforce. So for me, I realized once I was there, I didn't get into the film program, but I realized I could essentially do the same things. And I'm also learning television and video classes, learning from those classes, which the film kids, they weren't taking those classes at all. So I felt like I was getting kind of the better of both worlds at that point. It was a happy accident for me. But then it really is just the relationships. I still, to this day, I work with people that I was doing student films with on those weekends. I've worked with Aviv several times out here. And, you know, the Emerson Mafia, I'll say it again, it is a real thing. And it's keeping that communication with other people who are interested in the same thing. It just keeps the work coming.
That is very encouraging to hear. Evan. And then I'm going to call in Jessica Isaacs, because Jessica, I can see you on my screen, so you might get a chance to speak here.
Great. I'm going to tee up Jessica. So I think I'm going to echo what everybody said and add one extra sprinkle to it, which I think is enthusiasm and access. So what Emerson has provided you all with is not only just collaborators, but enthusiasm, people right now who are ready to tackle this new challenge creatively. I know just personally, I have been producing nothing but live streams right now. And everybody is telling me the limitations of live streams, but the other great thing about live streams is that you can literally do what we're doing right now, which is access an incredible community at any moment. And I think the other thing about Emerson that was really helpful for me is, I don't know, like many of you, I was like a kid who went to a small high school and was like, oh, I don't know anybody who likes the things I like. And then I went to Emerson and everybody liked the things I liked. Everybody wanted to talk about movies and everybody wanted to talk about Mr. Show and, you know, all the things that I got at Borders, which you can look up Borders. But I guess my main point here is that enthusiasm is what's going to get you through this time, and the access that you have is the thing that's going to allow you to get into that next phase of your career. So the people who you are connected with now, you know, these people are accurate in saying, like, it's not even just network, because network sounds kind of, you know, like you have to be sending LinkedIn emails. I think it's more about finding the people who you really cared about at school and harnessing that youthful energy that you have now to create something, and then just see where it goes. I think, you know, trying to plan out how it can lead to your next job might put too much stress on it. So I think that kind of just like banding together mentality is what Emerson really gave me, and it allowed me access to people who were able to follow through on that energy.
That's beautiful. I'm actually not going to call in Jessica Isaacs yet, but stay alert, Jessica. It's not over yet. So this is fantastic. This is super cool. Could you guys then, each of you, like summarize in some way, like a piece of advice you'd give to all of these excellent people? What's something you would, which may like draw on some of what you've already said, may be a new sprinkle. And you notice that Evan got 2 old person jokes in there. That was very impressive. There was a Borders joke, and then there was the youthful energy joke. So like 10 years have gone by and he's already coming after you, you young people. Good heavens, yes, it's been quite some time. So this time, I think we're going to start with Gray. Piece of advice.
Sure, yeah. I think someone once told me that you can't, basically that you can't knock on a door and wait for someone to open it. You have to reach down and push the door open yourself. And I have found that one piece of advice so true over the years. I think a lot of people out there, Emerson definitely embedded this in me, that like, you don't just try once, you try again. And then after that, you go and try a different way, and you're persistent and you're savvy and you're smart, and just don't let that door stand there and let you, you know, you forget that you have the power to reach down and potentially open it yourself. So that would be my advice to think about. And no, it's broad and sort of annoying, but it's really true.
That's outstanding. Kristen.
Yeah. I would say I've talked with a lot of recent graduates about what the process is like for getting their first job out of college. And a lot of them say, well, I've done the work, right? I've made this list of my 20 dream companies that I would just like kill to work for. And, you know, they'll go through all the reasons why they want to work for said companies, which I think is great. You know, that's not wasted time. But I would say, and I would take this advice if I could go back in time and do it again for myself too. I would say instead of making a list of those dream companies, start by doing kind of almost like a self-reflection exercise where you really think about, you know, what criteria you want to see in a company based on what your values are, what creative outlets you're looking for, what you want out of a company's brand mission, what you want out of your colleagues, like what is the atmosphere and what is the vibe of the place that you want to be at every single day of your life, or in my case, you know, Monday through Friday, but obviously it'll vary. You're going to spend a lot of time there, basically. So how do you want that place to look and how do you want it to feel? I actually wish, you know, I had done that for myself, because I think ultimately that is really the most important thing. And that is how you will know you will find that perfect fit of a company for you. It's not necessarily going to be based on who's been written up the most times in Variety or the Hollywood Reporter. It's really going to be that place that really speaks to your values and your character and what gets you excited from a creative standpoint. So that's what I would say to do.
I just want to echo that. I work on this with my students, but I also work on this with friends of mine who are switching jobs in some ways, and people still get hung up on like a position. They don't understand the atmosphere or the environment, right? And so just to put a little bit of salt on that one, it's harder than it sounds. I'm an economist. Like one of the things I study is people's preferences. We don't understand ourselves well, right? So I don't know about your experience, Kristen, but in my experience, like doing that work, it's harder than it sounds because we're not always clear on what we're looking for. So it's a really good exercise. It's a super good exercise. Aviv.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't directly said it, but yeah, you guys are graduating at a really unusual time. And it's like and it's unlike '08 all at the same time. There's going to be fewer job opportunities in maybe obvious entry-level positions, but there's also in every crisis an opportunity, and you're going to be able to find those places to sneak in. And there's going to be a lot of people that you apply to jobs for, or that you talk with, that you think have the expertise that you that will give you the answer. And the fact is that nobody has like a clear answer right now. Nobody knows what's supposed to be or what it's going to be or how it's supposed to work. And frankly, you guys have this crisis / opportunity to help create for yourselves. And your creativity, your independence, your lack of being locked into what the world, what the economy and what business is supposed to be, is a tool to use. Like if you figure out a way to make interesting content on a live stream, go and do that. If you have a camera at home and you can make your content and tell your stories that are engaging and interesting, publish it. The tools are there for you. And a lot of you already know that, but it's a real place right now where people who have been making content for 50, 30 years are now screaming because they don't know what the hell to do. And, you know, don't be scared of falling on your face. You know, an expert, the person who's at the absolute top of their game, has failed more times than somebody who hasn't tried. So just get out there, fall on your face, and then get back up, because nobody's going to brush you off or make you feel better for cutting your knee. You just have to get back up and try it again, and you'll get it right. Eventually you'll get it right.
Yeah, that's outstanding. Heather Marie, did you go
Yeah,
first? Did I ask
uh,
you? Oh,
not this question, no.
okay.
So kind of similar to what my fellow panelists have said, don't be afraid to kind of, again, think outside the box of where you work as far as an industry goes. Because you might think, oh, I'm a writer, so I have to work for a publisher or a periodical. You can write in so many other places. I got to work in the healthcare industry and in higher education and at a tech company, all experiences that I didn't think when I left Emerson, I wasn't really keyed into those, but I got invaluable experience learning how to do communication and and I also great life experience working in those areas. It also maybe will give you an idea of, a different angle of where you want your career to go. Like I realized I wanted to do international affairs and international security, and when I was figuring out where to work, I was so keyed into the U.S. State Department that I wasn't looking at anything else. And then I started looking at other opportunities. I landed an awesome internship in grad school at the Defense Department, which has launched a really, really interesting career working in the Defense Department and now at the Department of Homeland Security. So do not be afraid to test out other areas. And if you kind of change your mind on what you want to do, that's okay. I'm in my 30s and I'm still figuring out what I want to do. It change any other day, it might change. And one more thing, put everything on your resume at this point, like all your clubs, all your extracurriculars, your projects, anything that you're doing. You edit a friend's video, you make a website, put it on your resume. I was told I got a job at Harvard, which was an incredible opportunity because I got to go to school there for almost free. And I was told that it was down to me and another person for the job. And I got the job because I had more experience on my resume from Emerson and all of the clubs. I was a leader in all these clubs and I did all this stuff. So they said, we were really impressed with that. And that's why we hired you over the other person. So put it on your resume.
That's excellent. And I'm sorry, now I'm going to make an Evan Kaufman old guy joke, and I can't remember who I haven't spoken to yet. So I think, is it Evan and Alan again? Did I put you guys at the end? I apologize. You don't know either. Whoever's left, give us some advice.
Sure, I'll go. So very similar. I have 2 points. One's very similar to what the other panelists have said. This is uncharted territory for everyone. So I think the silver lining advantage that newcomers have is, like at the start of my career, I didn't know, I heard about the recession, everybody's talking about it, but I didn't really experience it. I didn't know myself. So you're just starting out, you're gonna have to find your path. You're gonna have to figure out what direction you wanna go and weasel your way into any project that you can get involved with. You're not jaded by the ways that you've been working for 10 years and all of a sudden that's swept out from under your feet. You got to figure out a new way to do it. You're starting fresh and I'd liken it to younger generations just being better with technology. You're not trying to change the way you've been working for the longest time. You're starting out fresh and you're going to have an advantage over people who have been doing the same thing for years and years. The other point that I would say, when you do get to being on set, when you're working with film crews, if you can make yourself indispensable to your direct boss or to a department, that's when they really want to keep you around and are going to bring you on to the next project. If you can make someone's job easier, or you make them feel like they couldn't have done it without you because you were just taking on that responsibility and anticipating what they need. You don't have to necessarily ask every time. There's always going to be questions. You're going to have to learn how to do certain things. But if you can keep your ears open, anticipate what people need, jump on it, try to do it before they ask, and then you will become indispensable to them and they will keep you on as long as they can.
Can I add to what Alan just said, just briefly before I have Evan? And I think that there's a lot of ways you can make yourself indispensable. One, like when Alan said that, it made me remember when I was a PA, what made me indispensable to a few key bosses was I knew how to make their coffee really well. And that got me a lot more jobs. And I felt like an idiot because that's what 4 years of college prepared me for. But it really did help me become indispensable, and it brought trust from those bosses who did ultimately respect me and provide me with more work and greater responsibility. But it's just like literally that modicum of kinds of making yourself indispensable. There's bigger and better ways, but that's one small way. Anyway.
That's just to echo that. It's a really excellent point. It's like a signal of emotional intelligence and reliability.
Mm-hmm.
It's a totally non-technical thing that demonstrates that you know what you're doing as a human, right? Ladies and gentlemen, Evan.
I agree 100% with Aviv, and most of my advice was coffee related, so he kind of stole that. But so I have 3 pieces of advice, and I'll also say that anyone who gives advice is largely just talking in a mirror. So this is advice for myself as well that I just constantly have to remind myself. So take a small business class. If you're a creative person, go online, take it for free, YouTube, small business, whatever it is, because you are now a small business. You have a bottom line, you have expenses, you have potential advantages over other people that you may not even realize. Take a small business class and understand that creative work is a business, and that, you know, if you are starting your own YouTube channel, there are expenses to that, but there are also benefits to it. Same thing, you know, I'm sure that Gray can kind of speak to this too. It's, you know, creative work is business work as well. I was naive to that fact and just kind of thought like someone would come along and offer me money and, you know, and I would just get to make my things. It kind of works like that, but most of the time it doesn't. And understanding that kind of budgetary stuff is a necessary evil for sure. I would say you can choose 2 ways for creative work to kind of infiltrate it, which is like inside the machine and outside of it. So inside the machine is going to one of these production companies, starting as like a PA, getting access to people, learning that stuff, and then kind of, you know, getting into that. And like, depending on what your role is, that's really great. There may be a time in which you are completely exhausted by that work and you're PAing 14-hour days and you think, I can't do the work I actually want to do. That might be an outside the machine kind of job. You know, that might be kind of like Heather said, it's like, you know, find another avenue potentially that allows you some time, the most important resource to do the thing that you want to do. Write, paint, photograph, whatever it is. Working at a coffee shop is not a shameful thing. It might be a little harder to get that job now, but you know, going on Fiverr and doing copywriting, that allows you to stay at home and then, you know, do some writing on your own time there. Fantastic. One of my professors at Emerson told me the best job he ever had was working at a place in which his boss couldn't see his computer screen because he wrote his novel while he worked. So, and then he taught at Emerson, so he did something right. And then I think my last piece of advice is understanding and checking in with your why. You know, when you're PAing or when you're working a job that you know, maybe you think is beneath you or something, or you feel as if you're not getting anywhere, just remember why you got into it in the first place. I think that's really important and kind of a thing that, you know, some of us talked about. It's, there's this great book on filmmaking by this guy, Ed Burns, called Independent Ed, which I highly recommend. He's a big, handsome lunk and he doesn't write very well, but he said something really great in it, which he basically talked about making his first independent movie and like the 2 weeks in which he made it and how that time was, you know, really magical. And he was talking to his dad and he's kind of asking like, I don't know what to do now. I don't know what's next for me, blah, blah, blah. And his dad was like this retired New York cop. And he's like, well, what was the best part of it? And he goes, those 2 weeks where I was making it. And he's like, all right, so we're going to find a way to get you the money to get you another 2 weeks somewhere down the road. So remember that why. When you're PAing and making fancy coffee or doing that kind of stuff, I think it's key to remember like, oh, what's the thing I really enjoy about this? And it's really difficult. You know, I'm producing right now, but it's definitely like, you know, I produce corporate videos sometimes and I'm like, what am I doing? And you just remember that why. And like, for me, it's presenting creative work and feeling that rush and excitement of making something and giving it over to somebody. So I think, you know, harnessing that will kind of get you through these tougher times.
Sweet. I'm going to leave now. Thank you, everybody. It's lovely to meet all of you marvelous people and to see some of you other marvelous people. Thank you. Who's taking it from here? Whoever's taking it from here?
That's me.
That's you. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Nejum.
Good luck, everyone.
So we have a few questions that were submitted ahead of time. If anyone has additional questions, we will have a couple of minutes to get through some. So if you have an additional question, please feel free to ask me in the chat. One of the questions that I thought was really interesting that was submitted by one of the students was, how did you find ways to earn money if you were unemployed for a while? And I'm going to change that to like, if you were not doing like I don't want to say a real job, but if you were working in a coffee shop or something like that, if you were unemployed for a while, in what ways did that add to your experience in your current field? Not everyone has to answer, maybe just like two of you.
I can answer because I definitely experienced that after I lost my my job on Beacon Hill. Back in 2008, obviously side hustles were a thing, but they weren't as accessible and they weren't as lucrative as they are now. So I temped a lot. And that was definitely about just saying, okay, I'm gonna do this thing, and then just have pride in what you do, because you really never know who is going to be there. Maybe, you know, they'll see, oh, you did a really great job with this 1-2 day project, we want to keep you on. So I'd say also just find other ways that you can network, babysit. I did a lot of that, and I still do. Babysit. If you have a car, think about signing up for a Lyft or Uber. Maybe not right now with everything. It probably won't be as lucrative, but there's tons of opportunities out there. Work your network, see what they've got. Maybe, you know, my aunt hired me to consult for her on marketing stuff. You don't know where things are unless you put feelers out there.
I think you called on me.
Yes, thank you for being able to read my lips as I said Aviv while muted.
Similarly, I found family and distant family and distant friends who had offices that needed papers copied. Like I literally would sit in an office and just scan boxes and boxes of documents to make a little bit of money on the side when I wasn't working. You guys will also experience, so that was obviously not career oriented, that was just survival money. But you guys will also be confronted with the option of being an employee or a 1099. And that's a very real difference. And when you're on payroll, you are able to, you won't get all of the money. If you're paid $200 a day, you'll get less than that because money will be taken out by the government. And then also it gets paid into your unemployment. So I am not ashamed to say I have been on unemployment a lot in my career. There are just weeks where you're not working, and unemployment is designed to cover those gaps. So take advantage of government programs like that. I'm taking advantage of it right now in the middle of this. So those things exist to help you. You can't get unemployment unless you've been working for a period of time already, but you will, and it will come back for you, and never feel ashamed to take advantage of that.
Thanks. We had a couple of questions about freelancing, some editing, some copywriting, editing. I think the editing question was about film. A few of you have done some freelancing. So can you just talk a little bit about what the best way is to take advantage and be successful as a career freelancer?
Oh, Alan, you go.
Sorry, I was muted. I've been freelance my entire career. So it's really, you have to market yourself. That is one thing that I was reluctant to do starting out with my career. I really don't like to be pushy or ask for jobs. But as I progressed and got to the position where people were looking for me to hire them, I would say never be ashamed to bug somebody or reach out and ask if they have anything to hire you, if they have any positions open. The one thing I realized is that you don't really, how do I say it? When you're in that position, you don't really think about everybody who could possibly be available for this job. Usually you typically go back to the last few people that you worked with. Sometimes you work with new people, you work with them for a while, and then after several months, you're not thinking about the same people who could possibly be available for the next job. And you do need those reminders. So anytime that somebody reaches out to me and is asking for a position on a shoot, do I have any shoots coming up? Do I need any help? I absolutely need those reminders to know who's out there and who's available, because most film projects are not long-term, especially the commercial world. People might be booked up for a week, they might be booked up for a month or two, and they're not available. So your go-tos might not be available right away. And then you have to start going down the list to find other people to fill those jobs. But then eventually that one's gonna end and people are gonna be available again. But you don't know who's actually out there and looking for work unless they reach out or market themselves.
Did you want to add anything, Evan?
I would just say it's part of your job to have your stuff ready. And by that, I mean, be prepared. When I'm looking to hire somebody and I go to their website and it's a mess, like my website is, it's not great. So definitely just, be prepared and I think much to Heather's point, it's like include the weird stuff you do and the different things you do, because it's very possible, especially right now. I was just working a job where I was looking for DPs who could shoot things specifically in their apartment. So the more kind of, varied interests that you have and the different things that you can do, yeah. I'm looking for somebody who can woodwork and shoot, and I can't find that person. I think that is, it's being prepared, right? I'm a person who loves to read a good magazine profile, and I always remember that Donald Glover got hired for 30 Rock because he had a Simpsons spec script that he wrote when he was like 22. And I'm trying to think, if when I was 22, did I have even a page of anything ready to go? I don't know. I'm sure you guys do. So be prepared and have it ready for when somebody reaches out.
Great, thank you. Here's a fun one. This will be our last question. Do you have any tips for paying back student loans while you're just getting your career started? Crickets. It's hard. It's really hard. Anyone want to pass on a little bit of advice about getting over that burden?
Make a budget for yourself and chip away very slowly. And even if it's 25 cents a month or whatever, hopefully it's more than that, but create that budget and be realistic with yourself.
Yeah, I would also say I didn't understand my student loans when I first got them. I sure as hell learned to understand them as I got out of college. And the better you understand the terms of them, the more you'll be able to beat them, so to speak. Figure out what alternatives you have if you have an option to delay payment because you're unemployed, or if you're able to take advantage of some government programs that exist because COVID-19 is the weirdest fucking thing that's happened. Those, learn as much as you can to empower yourself. Don't let those things be mysteries.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Evie.
Go. I'm done. That's it.
Take advantage of the low interest rates and think about refinancing right now. You're just graduating, but I'm not joking. You could actually save a lot of money on the back end by doing that. And also don't forget about retirement, because that's very important. Even if you're just putting away $5 a paycheck into a savings account, that's something. Open an IRA. I'm the scary terms because you're all 21, 22, but it'll be better for you in the long run.
Yes, I cannot echo what Heather just said more vehemently. You guys are young. You have your whole lives ahead of you. It's really hard to think about your retirement fund right now. But even if it's the smallest bit of money that you can slot away, start doing it now just to get into the habit of it. I also wish I had known that right after I graduated. I mean, I'm sure all the panelists are now, but it took me way longer than I cared to admit to start doing that. And it's obviously really important. So make that a priority for sure. And refinance. I think that's great.
If a bank is offering you less than 1% on your savings account, go to a different bank. Capital One exists. Just try it. And that's honest, like that's $2,000. That's money in your pocket every year if you have savings. It exists.
Well, wonderful. So thank you all so much for your insight and advice and your very Emerson way of saying it. So just so everyone knows, the recording of this will be available on the Canvas course that the Career Center has set up, which also provides additional resources. So I encourage you all to check that out if you haven't already. And I just want to take a moment to thank those who were instrumental in putting this all together. The Emerson College Career Development Center, SEAL, your SGA class council, especially Estelle and Connor, and of course our amazing panelists and NEGEM. So if any of you have any additional questions, please feel free to email alumni@emerson.edu. And now that you're all alumni, please be sure to follow the Alumni Association on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for news about upcoming programs. We have another panel planned on the 13th with some employers who are looking to hire people. So I hope you all found this to be incredibly helpful as you launch your job searches, and really congratulations on your graduation. Thanks everybody and have a great night.
Thank you.